Story 1, Inferno at the Iroquois. My name is Clara Hensley, and I was there when the Iroquois Theater burned, December 30th, 1903, a Wednesday afternoon, cold and gray with snow dusting Chicago's Loop. I was 16, a seamstress's apprentice, clutching a ticket to the matinee of Mr. Bluebeard. My mother had saved for weeks to send me a rare treat for a girl like me. The theater was a palace, marble columns, velvet seats, chandeliers glittering like stars. They called it fireproof. I believed them. We all did. I sat in the balcony, third row from the railing, my best dress smoothed over my knees. The show was lively, full of music and color. Eddie Foy, the star, pranced across the stage, his painted face grinning. Below, the auditorium buzzed with families, mothers with children, some no older than 5, their laughter bright. I felt a thrill, a sense of being part of something grand. But then halfway through the second act, I saw it, a spark, small and sharp, spitting from a stage light near the proscenium. At first, no one noticed. The actors kept singing, the orchestra played on, but I couldn't look away. The spark caught a curtain, a gauzy thing draped high above the stage. A tiny flame licked upward, then spread, fast, like a snake slithering across silk. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A man in the orchestra seats stood pointing. Then the flame leapt, splashing across a velvet backdrop. It wasn't a spark anymore, it was a beast, roaring with hunger. The music faltered. Eddie Foy stepped forward, hands raised, shouting for calm. "Stay in your seats," he called, his voice cracking. But the fire didn't listen. It surged, swallowing props, climbing ropes, turning the stage into a furnace. Smoke billowed thick and black, curling into the auditorium. People screamed, a sound like 1,000 birds trapped in a net. I froze, my hands gripping the armrests, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The crowd surged toward the exits. I was swept along, my feet barely touching the floor. The balcony was a chaos of bodies. Mothers clutching children, men shoving past, everyone scrambling for the narrow stairwells. I reached the top of the stairs, but the doors below wouldn't open. They swung inward, and the crush of people pinned them shut. Someone behind me fell, and I stumbled, my hands catching the railing. Below, I saw bodies piling up, limbs tangled, faces twisted in terror. The smoke was everywhere now, choking, stinging my eyes. I coughed, my throat burning, and pulled my scarf over my mouth. A woman beside me screamed for her daughter, her voice raw, but the girl was gone, lost in the mass. I wanted to help, but I couldn't move. The heat was unbearable, pressing against my skin like a living thing. I heard glass shatter somewhere below, and a gust of cold air swept through, feeding the flames. They roared louder, a sound like the end of the world. I don't know how I made it to the stairwell. Maybe it was luck, maybe something else. I felt a hand on my shoulder, firm but gentle, guiding me through the crush. I turned, but no one was there, just shadows and smoke. My legs moved, carrying me down the steps, over bodies that didn't move anymore. I reached a side door, one that opened to an alley, and stumbled into the snow. The air was sharp, clean, but the screams followed me, echoing off the brick walls. Outside, the alley was a nightmare. Bodies were stacked like cordwood, some still moving, others still forever. Firemen hacked at locked doors with axes, their faces grim. I saw a girl, no older than me, lying in the snow, her dress scorched, her eyes wide and unseeing. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The alley, later they'd call it Death Alley, was a graveyard and I was alive in it. I wandered numb, my dress torn, my hands trembling. The fire was out by the time the sun set, but the theater was a ruin, its grand facade blackened. They said 602 people died that day, most of them women and children. I saw the numbers in the papers later, but they didn't capture the horror. The way the living clawed over the dead, the way the air itself seemed to scream. I never went back to the Iroquois, not when they rebuilt it, not when it became the Nederlander Theater, but I couldn't stay away either. Years passed, and I found work as a seamstress in the Loop, close enough to hear the theater's music drifting through the streets. By 1920, I was married with a daughter of my own. I told her about that day, though I spared her the worst. She'd listen, wide-eyed, then ask why I kept a photograph of the theater on my dresser. I didn't know how to explain it. Something held me to that place, like a thread I couldn't cut. One night in 1925, I walked past the theater after work. It was late, the streets quiet, the marquee dark. I stopped at the mouth of Death Alley, the same place I'd stumbled out all those years ago. The air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. I saw a flicker, a pale glow near the alley's end, like a lantern someone had forgotten. But no one was there. I stepped closer, my heart thudding. The light moved, hovering, then split into two, then three, small orbs dancing in the dark. They weren't lanterns. They weren't anything I could name. I heard a whisper, faint, like a child's voice calling for her mother. My skin prickled. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. The orbs drifted closer, their light cold, almost blue. I felt that same hand on my shoulder, the one from the fire, guiding me back. "Go," a voice said, not out loud, but in my head. I stumbled backward, my breath shallow, and the lights faded into the brick. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? But I kept going back, night after night, watching that alley. Sometimes the lights were there, sometimes not. Once I saw a shadow, a figure, small, like a child in a scorched dress, standing at the alley's edge. She looked at me, her eyes empty, then vanished. I stopped sleeping after that. My husband thought I was sick, but it wasn't sickness. It was the theater calling me back. By 1930, I was working as a cleaner at the Nederlander. I didn't want the job, but we needed the money, and something in me needed to be there. The theater was beautiful again, all gold and velvet, but it felt wrong. The air was too heavy, the shadows too sharp. I'd mop the floors late at night, alone, and hear things. Footsteps in the wings, a soft sob from the orchestra seats. Once, I found a child's glove on the stage, old and charred, though the theater had been spotless when I started. One night, I was in the balcony sweeping when the lights dimmed, not the electric ones. The whole room seemed to darken, like a cloud passing over the sun. I heard laughter, faint, like the crowd from that day in 1903. I turned, and there they were, shadows in the seats, dozens of them, their faces blurred but their eyes bright, watching me. I dropped my broom, my hand shaking. The air grew hot, the smell of smoke sharp in my nose. I ran for the stairs, but they were gone, replaced by a wall of flame. I screamed, falling to my knees, and felt that hand again pulling me up, guiding me to the real stairs. I stumbled out into the alley, gasping, the theater silent behind me. I quit the next day. I couldn't go back, not after that. But the theater followed me. At home, I'd wake to whispers in the dark, see orbs floating outside my window. My daughter said she saw a girl in her room once, pale and silent, pointing at the photograph on my dresser. I burned it, thinking it would help, but it didn't. The dreams came instead. Flames, screams, bodies piled high. Always that hand guiding me, and those eyes watching from the shadows. Now, in 1940, I'm older, my hair gray, my hands worn. I live far from the loop, but I still hear the theater's call. I read about it in the papers, actors saying they feel watched, stagehands finding props moved, lights flickering with no cause. They say the Nederlander is haunted, that the ghosts of the Iroquois never left. I know they're right. I see them in my dreams, feel them in the air. That day in 1903 didn't end for me, and it never will. The fire is still burning, the alley's still full, and those lights, those restless glowing orbs, are still waiting, dancing in the dark where the dead don't rest. Story 2, Ghost Light at the Tampa Theater. My name is Clara, and I've been a volunteer usher at the Tampa Theater since I was 16, drawn to its velvet curtains and golden chandeliers like a moth to a flame. The theater, built in 1926, is a cathedral of flickering shadows and whispered secrets, its Mediterranean revival architecture hiding stories in every carved gargoyle and arched doorway. I thought I knew every creak of its floors, every echo in its halls. But some things you don't understand until they find you. This is my story, told in the quiet hours when the theater's lights dim and the air grows heavy with the weight of the unseen. It started on a muggy October evening in 2025, my third year at the theater. I was locking up after a late showing of a silent film, the kind where the Wurlitzer organ's notes linger like a memory you can't shake. The auditorium was empty, the last patron long gone, and I was alone, or so I thought. As I swept the mezzanine, my flashlight caught a flicker of white near the dressing rooms upstairs. Not a reflection, not a trick of the light, but a figure, a woman in a flowing gown, pale as moonlight, gliding past the doorway. My breath caught, and I froze, the beam trembling in my hand. She didn't turn, didn't acknowledge me, just drifted out of sight. I stood there, heart pounding, telling myself it was a shadow, a costume left hanging, anything but what my gut screamed it was. I'd heard the stories. The young woman in white, killed in a carriage accident on Franklin Street before the theater rose from the dirt. Staff whispered about her, how she wandered the mezzanine, confused, searching for a home that no longer existed. I'd laughed it off, chalking it up to late-night imagination and too many ghost tours. But that night, as I locked the mezzanine door, I felt eyes on my back, a prickle of awareness that made my skin crawl. I didn't look back. The next week, I was assigned to clean the backstage dressing rooms. The theater was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. I was wiping down mirrors when I noticed the door to dressing room B was ajar. I'd locked it myself an hour earlier, double-checked it even because the stage manager was strict about security. I pushed it open, expecting a forgotten prop or a draft. Instead, I found a chair and a box fan, normally tucked against the wall, now wedged behind the door. No one had been backstage. No one could have moved them without me hearing. I stared, my pulse loud in my ears, and nudged the chair back into place. As I did, the fan's blade spun once, slow and deliberate, though it wasn't plugged in. I backed out, slamming the door, and didn't go near dressing room B for the rest of my shift. I told myself it was nothing, a quirk of old wiring or my tired mind playing tricks. But the theater had other ideas. 2 nights later, during a ghost tour I was helping guide, a guest's audio recorder caught something. We were in the auditorium, the organ humming softly, when a woman asked about the dressing room incidents. I was mid-sentence explaining the moved furniture when a sharp bang echoed from backstage. The group froze. I forced a smile, said it was probably a prop falling, but the guest played back her recorder. Clear as day, amid our voices was a metallic slam, like a locker door shutting hard. No one had been near the lockers. The group's nervous laughter didn't mask the chill that settled over us, and I avoided the backstage for a week. The theater wasn't done with me. By November, I was jumpy, checking corners and listening for sounds that didn't belong. I started noticing small things. My keys, left on the usher's desk, would end up in my pocket. A broom I'd propped against a wall would be lying flat when I returned. I told my friend Sam, another volunteer, and he laughed, saying it was probably Fink Finley, the old projectionist. Foster Fink Finley, who ran the projectors from 1930 until his death in 1965, was a theater legend. He'd collapsed in the booth, they said, his heart giving out mid-reel. Staff swore his footsteps still echoed on the stairs, that he tugged at doors or moved tools to remind everyone he was still there. I didn't believe in Fink. Not until the night I lost my locket. It was a silver oval, a gift from my grandmother, and I never took it off except to clean it. I'd set it on the counter in the lobby restroom while washing my hands after a shift. When I reached for it, it was gone. I tore the room apart, checked every sink, every stall. Nothing. Desperate, I remembered a story about an employee named Angel who'd lost a knife and jokingly asked the theater's ghosts to return it. Feeling foolish, I stood in the empty lobby, the chandeliers casting long shadows, and whispered, "Fink, if you're here, please give me back my locket." Silence. I laughed at myself, turning to leave, when something glinted on the counter. My locket, sitting exactly where I had left it, though I'd searched that spot a dozen times. My hand shook as I clasped it back on, the metal cold against my skin. I didn't tell anyone. How could I? But I started avoiding the lobby alone at night. By December, the theater felt alive in a way I couldn't explain. Every shift brought something new. One night, while checking the balcony, I heard footsteps on the projection booth stairs, slow, deliberate, like someone climbing with purpose. I called out, thinking it was Sam or the stage manager. No answer. I climbed the stairs, my flashlight shaking, and found the booth empty, the projector silent. But the air was heavy, like someone had just left. I stopped volunteering for late shifts after that. The worst came in January. I was closing up the auditorium, the last to leave after a double feature. The Wurlitzer organ had been played that night, and its notes still seemed to hum in the walls. As I reached to turn off the house lights, the switch wouldn't budge. I pushed harder, but it felt like someone was holding it in place. My stomach dropped. I let go, and the switch flicked off on its own, plunging the auditorium into darkness. Then, from the mezzanine, a soft sob echoed, a woman's voice, faint but unmistakable. I bolted for the exit, my footsteps loud against the carpet, and didn't stop until I was outside, the humid Tampa air hitting me like a slap. I told the marketing director, Jill Witecki, the next day. She nodded, unsurprised and said the theater's ghosts were active this time of year. She'd heard the stories, too. The young woman in white, Fink, the dressing room oddities. "They don't hurt anyone," she said. "They just stay." Her words didn't comfort me. I started bringing a flashlight even during daytime shifts, checking corners like a kid afraid of the dark. The final straw was in February. I was in the projection booth, training a new volunteer named Mia. We were testing the old 35mm projector, its hum filling the cramped space. As I explained the controls, the door rattled like someone was trying to get in. Mia laughed, thinking it was a prank, but I knew better. I opened the door. Nothing, no one. But when I turned back, the projector's reel was spinning, though I hadn't touched it. Mia screamed, and we both ran down the stairs. The reels clattered, chasing us. I quit volunteering the next day. I haven't been back to the Tampa Theater since. I drive by sometimes, its marquee glowing against the night sky, and I wonder if the young woman in white is still searching, if Fink is still climbing those stairs. The theater is a beautiful, haunted place, its ghosts tied to its history like actors to a stage. They don't leave, and maybe they never will. As for me, I keep my locket close, a reminder that some things, lost or not, find their way back when the theater wants them to. Story 3. Backstage Shadows. Olive Thomas at the New Amsterdam. I am Olive Thomas, or what remains of me, tethered to the New Amsterdam Theater on 42nd Street. Once, I was a Ziegfeld Follies girl, my laughter echoing through these halls, my feet tapping across the stage to the delight of crowds. That was before Paris, before the Blue Bottle, before the poison stole my breath at 25. They say I swallowed it by mistake, but the truth is murkier, lost in the haze of 1920. Now I linger in these walls, a shadow who cannot leave. My story is no longer mine to live, but I'll tell it as I see it, through the flickering lights, the phantom taps, and the whispers that keep this theater alive with my presence. The New Amsterdam was my world in 1916, its velvet seats packed with faces that adored me. I was a chorus girl, my sequined costumes catching the stage lights as I danced. The air smelled of grease paint and dust, and the stagehand's shouts mingled with the orchestra's tuning. I loved it, the thrill of the spotlight, the rhythm of my heels against the boards. But love led me away, to Hollywood, to a marriage that glittered until it didn't. By 1920, I was in Paris, chasing something I couldn't name. A blue bottle sat on the hotel nightstand, its contents meant for my husband's illness. I don't remember reaching for it, only the burn in my throat, the cold marble floor, and then nothing. I woke here, in the New Amsterdam, though I don't know how. The theater was quieter then, the 1920s stretching into lean years. The stagehands noticed me first. I'd drift across the rooftop theater, my reflection flickering in the old mirrors. "Olive's back?" they'd whisper, half laughing, half shivering as they spotted my face. Cheerful, unchanged, clutching that cursed blue bottle. I didn't mean to scare them. I only wanted to feel the stage again, to hear the echo of applause. But my steps made no sound, and my hands passed through the props. I was a ghost, bound to these walls by some unfinished thread. The theater grew dark in the decades that followed, its seats empty, its stage silent. I wandered alone, my presence fading as the world forgot me. Dust settled on the chandeliers, and the air grew heavy with neglect. I'd glide through the aisles, my fingers brushing the velvet, willing someone to return. Sometimes I'd tap my feet on the stage, hoping the sound would carry. It never did. The New Amsterdam was a tomb, and I was its only occupant. Then came the 1990s, and the theater stirred awake. Disney's crews arrived, hauling scaffolding and paint cans, their voices loud with purpose. The restoration woke me, too. I felt the hum of life return, the pulse of the stage reigniting. But with it came new eyes, new ears, people who didn't know me, but would soon learn my name. It started small. A construction worker in the rooftop theater paused, his hammer mid-swing as my tap shoes clicked above him. He climbed the stairs, sweat beading on his brow, only to find the stage empty. "Someone's up there," he muttered, but his flashlight caught nothing but cobwebs. I laughed, my voice a breeze that ruffled his hair. I wasn't cruel, just playful, teasing the living who trespassed in my home. By 1997, the theater gleamed anew, its gold trim polished, its lights blazing. The reopening brought crowds, actors, ushers, and me. I couldn't resist joining them. One night, an usher named Clara lingered in the balcony, her flashlight sweeping the rows. She froze as my footsteps echoed overhead, sharp and deliberate, like a dancer warming up. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. I stepped into the office behind her, my 1920 sash swaying, my face half lit in the mirror. She turned, gasped, and I was gone. I didn't mean to startle her, but it's hard to stay still when the theater thrums with life. The stories spread. "Olive's ghost," they called me, their voices a mix of fear and fascination. I liked that they knew my name. I began to test my limits, flickering the dressing room lights when actors lingered too long, brushing past ushers in the halls. One morning, a stagehand named Tom felt a cool breeze as he set up props. He turned expecting a draft, but the air was still. "Olive?" he whispered, half joking. I tapped the floor twice, sharp and clear, and he dropped his wrench. I couldn't help it. I giggled, the sound slipping through the walls. In 2014, during rehearsals for Aladdin, the theater buzzed with energy. I loved the chaos, costumes strewn across chairs, scripts scattered on tables. A conductor named Elise sat in the orchestra pit, scribbling a letter. "Dear Olive," she wrote, "bring us luck tonight." I read over her shoulder, curious. No one had spoken to me like that before, not since the stagehands of the 1920s. When she finished, I couldn't resist. I reached for the dressing room lights, 4 new bulbs, gleaming bright, and made them flicker in unison, off and on like a wink. Elise laughed, her eyes wide. "Thanks, Olive," she said, and I felt a warmth I hadn't known in decades. The Disney crew grew used to me. Dana Amendola, the ops VP, hung my photo by every backstage door, a nod to my presence. "She is never violent, always playful," he'd say, and I liked that. I wasn't here to harm, only to dance, to linger where I'd been happiest. But not everyone was charmed. A new usher, Michael, joined in 2018, skeptical of the ghost stories. He scoffed when the others warned him about me, calling it theater nonsense. I decided to show him. One quiet morning, as Michael swept the aisles, I let my presence grow heavy. The air cooled, the lights dimmed, and my footsteps echoed from the stage. He stopped, his broom still, and muttered, "Cut it out." I tapped again, louder, closer, until the sound was right behind him. He spun around, his face pale, and saw my reflection in the proscenium mirror. A flash of my smile, my sash, my blue bottle. He stumbled back, his broom clattering to the floor. "Okay, Olive," he gasped. "You win." I didn't follow him as he fled to the lobby. I only wanted him to believe. The years passed, but time means little to me. The New Amsterdam changes, new shows, new faces, but I remain. Sometimes I'm bold, flickering the balcony lights during a quiet matinee. Other times, I'm subtle, a breeze brushing an actor's cheek as they wait in the wings. I've learned to love the small moments, the gasp of an usher, the nervous laughter of a stagehand, the way my name lingers in their stories. One night in 2023, a young actress named Lily sat alone in her dressing room, her script open to the first page. She was nervous, her hands trembling as she memorized her lines. I remembered that feeling, the weight of the spotlight, the fear of forgetting a step. I stood beside her, unseen, and let my hand hover over hers. The air shimmered, and her script rustled as if caught in a draft. She looked up, her eyes searching the empty room. "Olive?" she whispered. I tapped the floor once, softly, and her smile broke through her nerves. "Thanks," she said, and I knew she'd shine that night. I don't know why I'm here, why the New Amsterdam holds me. Maybe it's the stage, the one place I was truly alive. Maybe it's the applause, still echoing in my memory. I move through the halls, the aisles, the balconies, my steps a faint rhythm in the quiet mornings. The blue bottle is always with me, a weight I can't drop. I don't mean to frighten, only to remind them I'm here, still dancing, still watching from the wings. The New Amsterdam is my home, its shadows, my stage. The living come and go, but I stay, a flicker in the lights, a tap in the dark. They call me playful, charming, a ghost who loves the show. And so I do. The curtain never falls for me, and the theater never sleeps. Story 4. The Phantom Ushers of the Alex Theater. I was 16 when I first stepped into the Alex Theater in Glendale, California, a grand old movie palace from 1925 that loomed over Brand Boulevard like a monument to a bygone era. Its neon-lit tower pierced the night sky, and the open forecourt, framed by Doric columns, whispered of forgotten glamour. I'd been hired as a part-time usher, my first job, and I was thrilled to work in a place so steeped in history. The ornate chandeliers, the Greek-inspired murals, the velvet seats. It was like stepping into a time capsule. But it wasn't the architecture that would haunt me. It was the shadows that lingered in the corners, the ones that didn't belong to the living. My first shift was a late-night screening of a classic horror film, The Haunting. The theater was nearly empty, just a handful of patrons scattered across the 1,400 seats. My job was simple: guide people to their seats, keep the aisles clear, and lock up after the show. The manager, a gruff man named Mr. Callahan, gave me a flashlight and a warning. "Don't wander off. This place has a way of playing tricks on you." I laughed it off, thinking he was just trying to spook the new kid. I wish I'd listened. The film started and the auditorium dimmed, the screen casting eerie flickers across the rows. I stood at the back, near the balcony stairs, my flashlight dangling at my side. The air felt heavy, like the weight of 100 years pressed down on me. About halfway through the movie, I noticed a faint glow moving down the aisle in the balcony above. At first I thought it was another usher, maybe checking for stragglers, but the light wasn't steady. It bobbed and swayed, like someone carrying an old lantern. I climbed the stairs quietly, my sneakers silent on the plush carpet, and peered into the darkness. There she was, a woman in a 1930s usherette uniform, her skirt crisp and her cap tilted just so, holding a glowing flashlight that cast no beam. She moved with purpose, guiding an invisible patron down the aisle. Beside her, a man in a tailored suit, his face blurred like a smudged photograph, walked with a slow, deliberate stride. They stopped at row 13, center, and the woman gestured toward the seats. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The theater was empty up here. No one had bought balcony tickets tonight. Yet there they were, two figures shimmering like heat waves, settling into the seats as if they belonged. I blinked, and they were gone. The air grew colder, and a faint scent of lavender perfume drifted past me. My heart pounded, but I told myself it was just my imagination, the old theater playing tricks like Callahan said. I hurried back downstairs, my flashlight beam shaking in my hand, and finished my shift without looking up at the balcony again. The next week, I was assigned to clean the men's restroom after a matinee. It was a slow day, and the theater felt cavernous, the echoes of my footsteps bouncing off the tiled walls. I was wiping down the sinks when I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror. A woman standing behind me, her reflection clear as day. She wore the same usherette uniform I'd seen in the balcony, her eyes dark and unblinking. My stomach lurched and I spun around, but the restroom was empty. Just me, the hum of the fluorescent lights, and the drip of a faucet. I looked back at the mirror, and she was still there, holding a stack of folded towels. Her lips curled into a faint smile. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The air seemed to tighten, and a thought that wasn't mine slipped into my head. "I like my job. Don't you love yours?" I stumbled backward, my hip hitting the sink, and felt a sharp pinch on my backside like someone had flicked me with a finger. The towels in her hands fluttered in the mirror, though no breeze stirred the room. I bolted out, slamming the door behind me, and didn't stop running until I was in the lobby, gasping for air. I told Callahan what happened, expecting him to laugh or fire me for losing my nerve. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "You saw her, huh? The usherette. She's been here since the 30s, likes to keep things tidy." He said it so casually, like he was talking about a regular customer. When I pressed him, he told me about the stories. Ushers, patrons, even stagehands who died in the theater or loved it so much they never left. "They're harmless," he said. "Just don't bother them, and they won't bother you." But they did bother me. Night after night, the theater seemed to come alive in ways that had nothing to do with the movies. During one late shift, I was sweeping the lobby when I heard voices from the auditorium. Not the muffled dialogue from the screen, but a heated argument, sharp and clear. I crept to the doors and peeked inside. The film was rolling, but the seats were empty, except for row 13 center. Two figures, hazy and translucent, sat there. A man's voice boomed, "I can talk as loud as I want," followed by a woman's sharp retort, "Keep it down, Harold." I watched frozen as they turned to glare at each other, their faces flickering like old film reels. Then they vanished, leaving only the echo of their bickering in the air. I started dreading my shifts, but I couldn't quit. The theater had a pull, like it wanted me to stay, to see more. One night, I was tasked with checking the projection booth after a screening. The booth was a cramped, dusty space filled with ancient equipment, the air thick with the smell of hot metal and old celluloid. As I checked the projector, the room grew cold, and the hairs on my neck stood up. A soft hum filled the air, not from the machinery, but from somewhere deeper, like a voice trapped in the walls. I turned to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. It wasn't locked. It felt like something was holding it shut. Behind me, the projector flickered on, casting a beam of light across the room. Shadows danced on the walls, but they weren't random. They formed shapes. People, dozens of them sitting in rows, watching a screen that didn't exist. I saw the usherette again, her flashlight glowing, leading a crowd of ghostly figures through the booth. Their faces were blank, their eyes hollow, but they moved with purpose, as if reliving a night from decades ago. The hum grew louder, a chorus of whispers, "Watch the show! Stay for the show!" I yanked at the door, my hand slick with sweat, until it finally gave way. I stumbled into the hallway, the projector shutting off behind me, the whispers fading into silence. By my third month, I was a wreck. I'd see the usherette in every mirror, her reflection always just out of reach. The bickering couple in row 13 would appear during every screening, their arguments louder each time. Once, I felt a hand brush my shoulder as I walked the aisles, but when I turned, no one was there, just the faint glow of a flashlight bobbing in the distance. I started to wonder if I was losing my mind, if the theater was infecting me with its ghosts. The final straw came during a special haunted movie night event. The theater was screening The Haunting again, and a guest speaker, Michael Corey, was there to talk about the Alex's paranormal history. I'd heard of him, a local paranormal investigator who'd written books about haunted places in Glendale. As he spoke to the audience, describing the usherette and the couple in row 13, I felt a chill. He was telling my story, things I'd never shared with anyone. He even mentioned the projection booth, claiming it was where the spirits gathered, replaying their favorite moments from the theater's golden age. During the film, I was stationed in the balcony, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The screen glowed with black and white shadows, but my eyes were drawn to the aisles. The usherette was there again, her light guiding a procession of ghostly patrons. They filled the seats, their forms flickering like old film. The couple in row 13 bickered loudly, their voices drowning out the movie. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The air grew thick, the lavender scent overwhelming, and I felt that pinch again, sharper this time, like a warning. Corey's voice echoed in my head. They're not trapped by death, but by devotion. I realized then that the theater wasn't just haunted, it was alive, a living memory that held on to everyone who'd ever loved it. The usherette, the couple, the shadows in the booth, they weren't here to scare me. They were here because this was their home, and I was the intruder. I quit the next day. Callahan didn't try to stop me. He just nodded like he'd seen it before. I never went back to the Alex, but I still dream about it. The glowing flashlight, the bickering voices, the usherette's smile in the mirror, they're all there, waiting for me in the dark. Sometimes I catch a whiff of lavender on the breeze, and I wonder if she's still out there, tending to her theater, forever guiding patrons to their seats. Story 5, Ghosts of Drury Lane. I am no stranger to the stage. My name is Eliza Hawthorne, and I've trodden the boards of London's Theatre Royal Drury Lane for nigh on a decade, a seamstress by day and an understudy by night. The theater, with its creaking timbers and shadowed corridors, is my home, yet it is no home at all. Not when the lights dim and the audience departs, leaving only the ghost light to cast its eerie blue glow across the empty stage. The tales of Drury Lane's phantoms are not mere gossip among the actors and crew. I have seen them, I have felt them, and now I will tell you of the nights that turned my blood to ice, when the Theatre Royal became a stage for specters. It began on a fog-choked evening in late autumn, the kind where the London streets seemed to dissolve into a gray haze. I was alone in the costume room, stitching a tear in a velvet gown for the next night's performance of Macbeth. The theater was quiet, save for the occasional groan of the building settling, as old buildings do. My needle moved rhythmically, the candle beside me flickering in the draught that always seemed to haunt this place. Then a sound, a soft, deliberate tap, tap, tap from the corridor beyond. I froze, my needle poised mid-stitch. The crew had long since gone home, and the actors were at supper. I was alone, or so I thought. I called out, my voice trembling, "Who's there?" No answer, only the tapping, now joined by a faint rustle, like fabric brushing against the floor. I set the gown aside and crept to the door, my candle casting long, wavering shadows on the walls. The corridor was empty, its gas lamps unlit, but the air felt heavy, as though someone, or something, watched me. I returned to my work, telling myself it was nothing, just the theater's age playing tricks. But as I picked up my needle, the candle snuffed out, plunging the room into darkness. I gasped, fumbling for the matchbox, when I heard it again, tap, 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 closer now, as if whatever it was stood just behind me. I struck a match, my hand shaking, and in the brief flare of light I saw it, a figure in the doorway, tall and gaunt, cloaked in gray, a tricorn hat shadowing its face. I screamed, and the match went out. When I lit another, the figure was gone. I did not sleep that night. The next day I told no one, for fear they'd think me mad. But the actors whispered of the man in gray, a specter who haunted the upper circle, vanishing into walls as if they were air. I had seen him, I was certain, though I dared not speak it aloud. I resolved to avoid working late, to leave with the others when the theater emptied. But fate, or perhaps something darker, had other plans. A week later, I was called to stay late again, this time to mend a torn curtain before a matinee. The stage manager, Mr. Harrow, was curt. "No excuses, Eliza. The show must go on." I nodded, my stomach twisting, and set to work in the wings, the ghost light, my only companion. The theater felt different that night, the air thick with an unnatural chill. As I stitched, I heard a low, mournful laugh, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I dropped my needle, my heart pounding. "Who's there?" I called again, though I knew no one would answer. The laugh came again, louder, and with it, the scent of lavender, sharp and sweet, filling the air. I stumbled back, my eyes darting to the shadows. Dan Leno, the music hall star, had once used this dressing room, and they said his scent lingered. Though he'd been dead for years, I had never believed it, until now. The laughter stopped, replaced by the sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, crossing the stage. I clutched my scissors, backing against the wall as the ghost light flickered, casting wild shadows. Then from the darkness, a figure emerged, not the man in gray, but another, shorter, with a painted face and tattered motley. Joseph Grimaldi, the clown, whose ghost was said to wait for laughter that never came. His eyes, hollow and black, fixed on me, and his painted smile stretched impossibly wide. I screamed, dropping the scissors, and ran for the stage door. But as I reached it, the door slammed shut, though no hand touched it. I pounded on it, sobbing as the footsteps grew louder, closer, until I felt a cold breath on my neck. I turned, and there was nothing, just the empty stage and the ghost light, steady once more. I fled the theater that night, vowing never to return. But the stage has a way of pulling you back. A month later, desperation drove me to accept another shift, this time to repair costumes for a new production. I told myself I'd be quick, that I'd work in the daylight. But the theater had other plans. As I sat in the costume room, the gas lamps flickered, and a low hum filled the air like the tuning of an unseen orchestra. I tried to focus, but the hum grew louder, joined by a whisper. My name, spoken softly, as if from a great distance. Eliza. I dropped my work and stood, my heart racing. The whisper came again, closer now, from the corridor. I grabbed a lantern and stepped out, determined to face whatever it was. The corridor was empty, but the air was thick with that same lavender scent. And now, a new sound, a soft, rhythmic creaking, like a trapdoor opening and closing. I followed the sound, my lantern trembling in my hand, down the backstage labyrinth to the trap room below the stage. The air grew colder with every step, and my breath fogged in the dim light. The creaking stopped as I reached the trap room, but now I heard something worse. A low guttural moan, like a voice trapped in agony. I raised my lantern, and there, in the corner, was the man in gray, his face half-shadowed, his eyes glinting with something not human. He raised a hand, pointing to the trapdoor above, and as I looked up, it slammed open, revealing nothing but darkness. I stumbled back, tripping over a coil of rope, and the lantern fell, shattering. In the darkness, I heard his voice, not a whisper now, but a command. Leave. I scrambled to my feet and ran, not stopping until I was out in the London fog, the theater's doors slamming shut behind me. I returned only once more, driven by a foolish need to prove I wasn't afraid. It was a mistake. That night, as I worked in the upper circle repairing seats, I felt a presence behind me. I turned, and there he was, the man in gray, standing at the end of the row, his cloak billowing though no wind stirred the air. He moved toward me, silent, his boots making no sound, and as he passed, I felt a chill so deep it burned. I ran, but as I reached the stairs, I heard the laughter again, Grimaldi's, sharp and mocking, joined by the rustle of unseen costumes and the slam of a distant trapdoor. I didn't stop running until I was home, and I never set foot in Drury Lane again. The theater still stands, its ghost light burning each night, a beacon for the phantoms that walk its boards. I see it in my dreams, the man in gray, Grimaldi's painted face, the scent of Leno's lavender. They are not mere stories, not tricks of the mind. They are as real as the stage itself, and they wait, patient and eternal, for the next soul to linger too long in the dark. Story 6, The Bishop and the Blue Lady. I am David Belasco, or at least I was. Time blurs when you're tethered to a place like this, caught in the endless echo of footlights and applause. The Belasco Theater, my theater, stands as it did when I built it in 1907, its Tiffany glass gleaming, its woodwork polished to a warm glow. But I am no longer its master, only its shadow, drifting through balconies and backstage halls, my black suit trailing like a whisper of the past. They call me the Bishop of Broadway now, a name I never chose, and I am not alone. There's another here, a woman in a robin's egg blue gown, her presence as restless as mine. This is our story, or what's left of it, a tale of moments that cling to these walls like dust, refusing to fade. It began on a November evening in 1910, the air sharp with the scent of sawdust and paint. The theater was alive, buzzing with the chatter of stage hands and the clatter of props being set for the Crimson Veil, a melodrama I'd poured my heart into. I stood in the wings, watching the actors rehearse, their voices rising and falling like waves. My private apartment, tucked in the attic, was my sanctuary, reachable only by a small elevator I'd had installed for late-night work. That night, I invited Clara, one of the actresses, to discuss her role. She was young, barely 20, with a fire in her eyes that made her perfect for the lead. Her costume, a shimmering blue gown, caught the stage lights as she stepped into the elevator. I followed, the doors creaking shut behind us. The ride was short, but something felt wrong. The air grew heavy, the walls of the elevator seeming to pulse. Clara's smile faltered, her hand clutching the railing. "Mr. Belasco," she whispered, "it's so cold." Before I could answer, the elevator jolted, a grinding screech tearing through the silence. The lights flickered, and then darkness. When they blinked back on, Clara was gone. The elevator was empty, save for me and a scattering of blue fabric at my feet, torn from her gown. I stumbled out into my apartment, calling her name, but the rooms were still, the air thick with an unnatural chill. I searched the theater that night, every corner, every shadow. Clara was nowhere. The only trace of her was that shredded gown, found later at the bottom of the elevator shaft. The theater carried on as theaters do. But I began to notice things. At first it was small, curtains swaying when the windows were shut, doors creaking open in empty rooms. Then came the sound, soft footsteps in the balcony when no one was there, a faint hum of a melody Clara used to sing. I'd catch glimpses of movement from the corner of my eye, a flash of blue vanishing around a corner. Stage hands whispered of a woman in a pale gown drifting through the lobby, her face half seen, her steps silent. They said she lingered near the elevator as if waiting for something or someone. I tried to dismiss it, a trick of the light, I told myself, or the strain of running a theater. But one night, during a dress rehearsal, I saw her. I was in my usual spot, the balcony overlooking the stage, when the air grew cold, my breath visible in the dim light. Below, the actors moved through their lines, unaware. Then, in the opposite balcony, she stood, a figure in that same robin's egg blue, her face pale, her eyes fixed on me. I froze, my heart a drum in my chest. She didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Then, as if dissolving into the shadows, she was gone. The actors below faltered, one dropping a prop, another missing a cue. They felt it too, though they couldn't name it. By 1912, the stories had spread. Stage hands refused to work alone backstage, claiming they'd seen a man in a black suit pacing the halls, his footsteps heavy, but leaving no mark. They said it was me, though I was still alive, still flesh and blood. I laughed it off, but the weight of their stares followed me. The theater dog, a scruffy mutt named Jasper, began growling at empty corners every afternoon around 4, his hackles raised, eyes locked on nothing. Once, I caught him staring at the elevator, his low growl echoing in the quiet. I approached, my hand trembling as I pressed the button. The doors opened, revealing nothing but the empty car. Yet Jasper backed away, whimpering. The actors started traditions to appease whatever haunted us. If someone wore a blue dress or suit on stage, the strange occurrences lessened. No flickering lights, no unexplained chills. It became a rule, unspoken but ironclad. During the Crimson Veils revival, an actress wore Clara's old costume, and for the first time in months, the theater felt calm. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Clara was still here, watching, waiting. In 1915, I saw her again. It was opening night for The Shadow's Edge, the house packed, the air electric with anticipation. I stood in the wings, my eyes scanning the crowd. Then, in the lobby, I saw her, a flicker of blue among the patrons, moving toward the balcony. I followed, pushing through the crowd, my pulse racing. She glided up the stairs, her gown trailing like mist. When I reached the balcony, it was empty, but the air was thick, oppressive. A stage hand found me there, pale and shaking. "You saw her, didn't you?" he said, his voice low. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The years blurred. The theater thrived, but the shadows grew heavier. Equipment would turn on without warning. Spotlights flaring in the dead of night, soundboards humming with no one at the controls. Once, a cameraman left his equipment in the elevator, only to find it waiting for him on the ground floor, untouched. He swore he'd seen a man in a black suit standing inside, but when he blinked, the figure was gone. I began to feel it too, a presence, not just Clara's, but my own, as if some part of me was already slipping into the theater's walls. By 1931, I was old, my health failing. The theater was my life, my soul woven into its beams and curtains. One night, alone in my apartment, I heard the elevator hum to life. I hadn't called it. The doors opened, and there she was, Clara, her blue gown pristine, her face a mask of sorrow. She reached out, her fingers brushing mine, cold as ice. "Why?" she whispered, her voice a thread of sound. I tried to speak, to ask what she meant, but the elevator doors closed, and she was gone. That was the last night I spent in the theater as a living man. Now, I am a shadow among shadows. I wander the balconies, the backstage halls, watching the performances that carry on without me. Clara is here too, her blue gown a beacon in the dark. We never speak, but I feel her presence, her question lingering in the air. The theater lives on, its new caretakers unaware of the weight we carry. They see us sometimes, a man in black, a woman in blue, fleeting glimpses that make their hearts race. On opening nights, when the house is full, I hear phantom applause from empty seats, a sound that echoes through time. The elevator still hums, its doors opening to nothing, or perhaps to everything. Stage hands still tell the stories. A new actor, trembling, will say, "I saw a man in the theater," and the old-timers will nod, describing me to the letter. Or they'll spot Clara, her gown shimmering in the lobby, and they'll whisper of the Blue Lady. The traditions hold, wear blue, and the spirits stay quiet. Ignore them, and the theater reminds you it's alive. Jasper is long gone, but sometimes I hear a growl, low and distant, at 4 o'clock. Last night, during a quiet rehearsal, the elevator moved again. I stood in the wings, watching as the doors opened. Clara was there, her eyes meeting mine across the decades. She stepped out, her gown trailing, and for a moment I thought she'd speak. But she turned, gliding toward the stage, where the actors froze, their lines forgotten. A spotlight flickered, casting her shadow across the curtains. Then she was gone, and the theater exhaled, the air lighter, but no less haunted. I don't know why we're here, Clara and I. Perhaps the theater holds us, its heart beating in the creak of floorboards and the hum of lights. Perhaps we're bound to the moments we lost. Her in that elevator, me in the life I built. The Belasco Theater is more than wood and glass. It's a living thing, and we are its ghosts, forever watching, forever waiting, forever part of the show. Story 7, Shadows in the Projection Room. My name is Clara Hensley, and I've been a stagehand at the Waco Hippodrome Theater since the spring of 2015, right after its grand restoration. The place is a beauty. Spanish Revival arches, velvet curtains the color of deep burgundy, and a chandelier that scatters light like stars across the auditorium. I was 22 when I started, fresh out of college with a theater tech degree and a hunger for late-night load-ins and the smell of sawdust. The Hippodrome was my dream job, a place where history hummed in the walls. But it didn't take long to realize those walls held more than history. They held something else, something that watched, something that moved, something that, on the worst nights, seemed to know my name. It started small, the way these things always do. My first week, I was sweeping the stage after a community play, the last of the audience long gone. The ghost light, a single bulb on a stand, left burning to keep the theater safe, cast long shadows across the empty seats. I was alone, or so I thought, when I heard it, a soft thud from the balcony, like a heavy book falling flat. I froze, broom in hand, and called out, "Hello?" My voice echoed, unanswered. I chalked it up to an old building settling, but my skin prickled as I finished my work and bolted for the exit. A month later, it wasn't so easy to dismiss. I was in the projection booth, a cramped space high above the auditorium, rewiring some old cables. The booth had a reputation. Everyone knew about the 1928 fire that gutted it, the one where the projectionist didn't make it out. The story was he'd been smoking, maybe dozed off, and a stray spark caught the film reels. The blaze spread fast, and panic tore through the crowd below. Some said people were trampled in the rush to escape. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I avoided looking at the scorched patches on the booth's walls, where the new paint couldn't quite hide the past. That night, I was alone again, the theater dark except for the glow of my work light. I was twisting a wire when the air turned cold. Not air conditioner cold, but the kind that sinks into your bones. I smelled cigarette smoke, sharp and acrid, though I hadn't lit anything, and smoking was banned in the building. My hand shook as I set down my tools. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. No answer, but the shadows in the corner seemed to shift, like someone was standing just out of sight. I grabbed my flashlight and swung it around, but the booth was empty. Then, from the projector, a machine that hadn't been powered on in weeks, came a faint whir, like the hum of spinning reels. I didn't wait to investigate. I ran, my footsteps pounding down the narrow stairs, not stopping until I was outside under the streetlights. I told myself it was my imagination that old theaters creak and groan. But the next incident wasn't so easy to explain. It was October, and we were prepping for a film festival. I was in the prop room sorting through crates of costumes when I heard footsteps above me. Heavy, deliberate steps, pacing the length of the stage. I assumed it was Nathan, the assistant manager, doing his nightly lockup. I called up through the ceiling, "Nathan, you need me for anything?" The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a single sharp tap, like a knuckle rapping on wood, came from the other side of the prop room door. I opened it, expecting to see Nathan, or maybe a stray prop falling, but the hallway was empty. I checked the stage, the lobby, even the bathrooms. No one was there. The front and side doors were locked from the inside. That's when I started talking to the other staff. Nathan told me about his own run-in, a cold draft, the smell of smoke, and a shadow on the security footage that shouldn't have been there. "It moved with me," he said, his face pale, "like it was following me out the door." He showed me the clip, and there it was, a blurry, human-shaped smudge sliding across the wall. No source, no explanation. Jennifer, the bartender, mentioned a champagne glass that fell off the counter one night, shattering on the floor with no one near it. "I stepped on the glass before I even saw it," she said, shivering. "It was like someone wanted me to notice." I didn't want to believe it, but the theater was starting to feel alive in a way that made my stomach twist. I began avoiding the projection booth, sticking to the stage or the lighting rig. But the presence, whatever it was, didn't stay confined. One night, I was in the auditorium adjusting the house lights when I heard applause. Not a full crowd, but a single pair of hands clapping, slow and deliberate, from the back row. I turned, expecting to see a late-night straggler, but the seats were empty. The clapping stopped, replaced by a low chuckle, so faint I thought I'd imagined it. I didn't stick around to find out. By December, I was jumpy, double-checking locks, and leaving the ghost light on even during the day. That's when I met Mike and Cindy Jacobus, local paranormal investigators who'd been called in after Jennifer's glass incident. They were kind, methodical, not the ghost-hunting showboats you see on TV. They set up their gear, EMF readers, spirit boxes, motion sensors, in the lobby and the booth. I watched as their devices lit up, faint beeps and static crackling in the quiet. "There's something here," Mike said, his voice calm but firm, not malevolent, but aware. "It's interacting." Cindy nodded, pointing to a meter that spiked near the stage. "It's like it's watching the show." Their findings didn't scare me as much as they intrigued me. If this thing, this spirit, wasn't trying to hurt us, what did it want? I started paying attention, noticing patterns. The presence was strongest at night, after the audiences left. It liked the stage, the booth, the dark corners where the light didn't reach. I began talking to it, half joking, half hoping. "Hey, if you're going to stick around, at least help with the cables," I'd mutter while coiling ropes. Once, a loose cord I'd been struggling with suddenly went taut, like someone had pulled it straight. I laughed, nervous, and said, "Thanks." The air felt lighter after that, like I'd made a friend, but not every encounter was so benign. In February, we were hosting a late-night rehearsal for a new play. I was in the lighting booth, tweaking the cues, when the control board fritzed. Lights flickered, dimmed, then flared bright, casting the stage in a harsh white glow. The actors froze, looking up at me, but my hands weren't on the controls. I slammed the power switch off, but the light stayed on for a full 10 seconds before going dark. Downstairs, one of the actresses swore she'd seen a figure in the wings, a tall, shadowy shape that vanished when she blinked. I didn't sleep that night. The worst came in April. I was alone, closing up after a quiet Wednesday show. The theater was silent, the ghost light casting its usual glow. I was in the lobby, checking the doors, when I heard my name. Not a shout, not a whisper, but a clear, low voice. Clara. I spun around, heart hammering, but no one was there. The voice came again, this time from the staircase leading to the balcony. Clara, come see. I don't know why I followed. Maybe curiosity, maybe something pulling me. But I climbed the stairs, my flashlight shaking in my hand. At the top, the balcony was empty, but the air was heavy, like a storm was about to break. Then, from the projection booth far across the theater, I heard that whir again, louder, faster, like a projector spinning out of control. I ran down the stairs, through the auditorium, and out the side door, not stopping until I was halfway down Austin Avenue. I took a week off after that, but I couldn't stay away. The Hippodrome was in my blood, ghost or no ghost. When I came back, I made a deal with whatever was there. You do your thing, I'll do mine, I said aloud one night, standing center stage. Just don't say my name again. Since then, it's been quieter. The clapping stopped. The shadows stayed still. But I still feel it sometimes. A brush of cold air, a flicker in the corner of my eye. The ghost light burns every night, and I make sure it's the last thing I check before I leave. Last Halloween, we held our first paranormal tour, letting guests wander the booth in the basement with EMF readers. They loved it, giggling at every creak, but I kept my distance. I know what's here. I don't need a meter to tell me. The Hippodrome's resident isn't just a story. It's part of the theater, woven into the curtains and the scorched walls of the projection room. It watches the shows, tinkers with the cords, and waits for the lights to go down. And me? I'm still here, sweeping the stage, keeping the ghost light burning, wondering if one night I'll turn around and finally see who's been watching me back. Story 8. I am the Savannah Theater, born in 1818, my wooden bones creaking under the weight of centuries. My stage has held countless stories, but none so enduring as the ones that linger in my shadows. I am no mere building. I am a vessel for the restless, the lost, the ones who never left. Let me tell you of the spirits who haunt my halls, of the tragedies that bound them to me, and of the chilling events that unfold when the lights dim and the curtains rise. It was 1827 when the first scar was burned into my heart. A pantomime played that night, the air thick with laughter and the flicker of candlelight. Then, fire. It roared through my timbers, devouring the stage where a young actress, Elizabeth, known to all as Betty, hid beneath the trapdoor, hoping for safety. The smoke found her first. She choked, her screams muffled, her hands clawing at the boards above. When the flames died, so did she, trapped under my stage. I felt her last breath, her terror seeping into my foundation. Since that night, Betty has never left. On opening nights, when the house is alive with anticipation, she appears, a fleeting figure in a tattered costume, standing just off stage. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, search for a cue that never comes. Actors whisper of her, saying she watches rehearsals, her presence a cold draft that brushes their necks. Once, a stagehand saw her shadow move across the wings, though no one stood there. He dropped his tools and fled, never to return. Time passed, and I endured. Rebuilt, repainted, I stood proud again. But the scars remained. In 1948, another fire came for me. This one was crueler, faster. The audience that night was packed tight, their excitement turning to panic as flames licked the walls. The exits, too narrow, became a crush of bodies. Among them was a boy, Ben, no more than 10, who loved to sneak into my balcony and toss popcorn at the seats below. He was trampled in the chaos, his small frame lost beneath the stampede. His laughter, once bright, now echoes as a faint giggle in my auditorium. Technicians working the balcony lights swear they feel tiny hands tugging at their shirts as if Ben wants to help focus the beams. During quiet scenes, when the stage is still, a single piece of phantom popcorn might land at an audience member's feet, rolling from nowhere. I hear him sometimes, scampering across my upper rows, his footsteps light but unmistakable. He is playful, but there's a sadness in his pranks, a longing to be seen. Then there's the director. He was a man of my stage in the early 1900s, a stage manager whose heart gave out mid-rehearsal. He loved this place too much to leave. From the darkened balcony, his voice carries a single cheer, a lone encore crackling through walkie-talkies when the theater is empty. His applause comes at odd moments, not for the actors, but for some private performance only he sees. Stagehands have heard his heavy footsteps pacing the catwalk, his shadow looming where no light should cast it. Once, a spotlight operator felt a firm hand on her shoulder, heard a low voice murmur, "Adjust the angle." She turned, heart pounding, to find the booth empty. The director is always watching, always directing a show that never ends. My nights are never silent. In 1895, even the police who patrolled my empty halls heard it. Loud applause, the faint strains of music, as if a full house reveled within. They searched every corner, found nothing, and left with faces pale. I could have told them it was no living audience. My ghosts are my constant company, their presence woven into every creak and groan of my frame. But it's not just Betty, Ben, and the director. There are others, less defined, shadows that flicker in my peripheral vision. A stagehand once swore he saw a chair slide across the backstage floor, unprompted, just as a dancer whispered, "Something's coming for me." The doorknob to the prop room jiggles on its own, turning with no hand to guide it. I feel them all, their weight pressing against my walls, their voices a chorus that never fades. One autumn evening, a new production was set to open, a tragedy, fittingly. The cast was young, eager, unaware of the eyes watching from beyond the footlights. As the crew set the stage, a prop table tipped over, spilling swords and goblets across the floor. The stage manager cursed, blaming clumsy hands, but I knew better. Betty was restless that night, her presence stronger than usual. A seamstress mending a costume in the wings froze as a cold breath grazed her cheek. She looked up to see a figure in a tattered gown vanish into the shadows. "Did you see that?" she whispered to the actor beside her. He hadn't, but his face paled when the curtain twitched, untouched by any draft. The performance began, the house lights dimmed, and I held my breath, if a theater can be said to breathe. In the quiet of the second act, a soft pop sounded in the stalls. A woman in the third row gasped, brushing a piece of popcorn from her lap. No one was eating. No one had been for hours. Ben, I thought, playing his tricks again. Up in the balcony, the spotlight operator flinched as a small hand tugged her sleeve. She spun, finding only darkness, but the light flickered, casting wild shadows across the stage. The actors faltered, their lines stumbling, but the show went on. They always do. I make sure of it. Later, during a scene change, the stage hands heard it. A single, sharp clap from the balcony. The director, approving or mocking, I couldn't tell. The walkie-talkies crackled to life, spitting static in a faint encore. The crew exchanged glances, their laughter nervous. They'd heard the stories, but hearing is not believing until you feel the chill yourself. As the final act closed, the curtain fell and the audience applauded. But another sound joined them. Copy-paste this line to continue. Then, a slow, deliberate clap from the back of the house, distinct from the crowds. The director taking his bow. The next night, the incidents grew stranger. A stage hand locking up after rehearsal heard the doorknob rattle violently as if someone or something desperately wanted in. He opened the door, heart pounding, but found only an empty hallway. Another night, a dancer practicing alone on stage froze as the orchestra pit lights flickered on, then off, revealing a fleeting glimpse of a small figure darting between seats. She refused to rehearse alone again. The cast began to whisper among themselves, sharing stories of cold spots, sudden chills, and the feeling of being watched. One actor, bold enough to stay late, saw a chair in the dressing room slide a full foot across the floor. He left his costume behind and never returned. The ghost tours began soon after, visitors flocking to my halls with their buzzing devices hoping to catch a whisper of Betty or Ben. They rarely do, but I feel them every night, every show. Betty stands in the wings, her silhouette sharp against the stage lights. Ben's laughter echoes in the rafters, his popcorn falling like soft rain. The director paces his balcony, his cheers a reminder that this is his stage too. The actors salute the empty seats before each performance, a nod to the unseen. When the overture swells and my red curtains part, I feel them settle into their places, Betty, Ben, the director, and the others, my eternal audience, watching from the shadows, forever bound to the story of me. Story 9. The Haunting of the Royal Alexandra Theater. I am the Royal Alexandra Theater, a grand old playhouse on King Street West in Toronto. My doors first thrown open in 1907. My walls, adorned with gilded moldings and velvet drapes, have borne witness to countless stories. Some played out on my stage, others whispered in my shadows. I am no stranger to the weight of history, but there are nights when that weight feels alive, as if the air itself holds its breath, waiting for something to stir. Tonight, I will tell you a tale not of actors or audiences, but of the unseen figures who linger within me, their presence as real as the creak of my ancient boards. It begins with a young stagehand named Clara, who arrived in the autumn of 1923, her eyes wide with dreams of the theater's glamour. She was hired to work the fly tower, the lofty rigging high above my stage where ropes and pulleys shift the scenery. Clara was nimble, fearless, climbing the narrow ladders to the catwalks with ease, her hands deft as she tied knots and adjusted counterweights. But she was curious, too, always lingering after her shift, listening to the older hands spin tales of the flyman, a shadow they claimed haunted the tower. They said he was a stagehand from my earliest days, one who fell from the catwalk in 1908, his body crumpling on the stage below. They called him the flyman because he was always up there pacing the rigging, his footsteps a faint echo when the theater fell silent. Clara laughed off the stories at first. She was practical, her mind fixed on the mechanics of the stage. But one night, as she worked alone in the fly tower, coiling ropes after a late rehearsal, she felt it, a prickle on her neck, like someone watching her. The air grew heavy, the kind of stillness that presses against your eardrums. She turned, expecting to see a co-worker, but the catwalk stretched empty before her, its metal grate glinting faintly under the work lights. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw it, a shadow, tall and lean, moving swiftly across the far end of the catwalk. Her breath caught as the gate at the fly rail swung gently, as if nudged by an unseen hand. "Who's there?" she called, her voice swallowed by the vastness of my rafters. No answer came, but the ropes beside her twitched, their knots loosening, as if someone had tugged them free. Clara told herself it was a trick of the light, a draft from the old ventilation. She tightened the ropes and descended the ladder, her heart pounding. But the next night, it happened again. She was adjusting a backdrop when the lights flickered, casting the tower into brief darkness. When they sputtered back on, she saw the shadow again, this time closer, standing near the fly rail, its form indistinct but undeniably human. The gate swung harder, clanging against the rail. Clara froze, her hands trembling on the rope. She didn't wait for the lights to flicker again. She fled down the ladder, her boots clanging on the rungs, and didn't stop until she was in the green room, where the other stage hands were packing up. She told them what she'd seen, expecting them to tease her. Instead, their faces grew solemn. "That's the flyman," said an older hand named Tom, his voice low. "He doesn't like it when you're up there alone." Clara wanted to argue, to insist it was her imagination, but the memory of that swinging gate, the unnatural chill in the air, kept her silent. She vowed to avoid the fly tower after dark, but the theater, my theater, has a way of pulling people back. Weeks later, Clara was assigned to the second balcony, helping to clean the seats before a matinee. The balcony was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hyper-aware of every sound. The creak of a chair, the rustle of a curtain. As she swept between the rows, a foul odor hit her, sharp and acrid like rotten eggs. She wrinkled her nose, checking her shoes, the floor, the seats. Nothing. The smell vanished as quickly as it came, but a cold draft followed, brushing against her arms despite the sealed windows. She shivered, glancing around, but the balcony was empty, or so she thought. As she moved to the next row, something brushed her elbow, a light tap, like a finger. She spun around, expecting to see a patron or an usher, but the seats were vacant. Her heart raced, her mind flashing to the stories she'd heard about the second balcony, whispers of a phantom audience man, a figure who appeared in empty seats, tapping arms or brushing shoulders before vanishing. Clara backed away, her broom clattering to the floor. She didn't stop to pick it up. She ran down the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness of my halls. By now, Clara was shaken, but she couldn't leave. The theater was her livelihood, her passion. She confided in Tom, who told her more about the ghosts. My ghosts. He spoke of the phantom audience man, said to be a patron from 1910, who loved the theater so much he never left. He told her of the flyman, whose fall was no accident, but a betrayal, pushed by a rival stagehand over a forgotten grudge. Tom warned her to be careful, to never linger too long in the quiet corners of the theater. "They're not malicious," he said, "but they don't like being ignored." Clara tried to heed his advice, sticking to daytime shifts, working in pairs. But the theater has a way of testing you. One night, a last-minute set change forced her to stay late, alone in the fly tower again. The show had ended, the audience gone, the stage dark. She was at her desk, a small table tucked in the corner of the loft, updating the rigging log on her battered typewriter. The air was still, the only sound the clack of her keys. Then the lights flickered, not once but 3 times, plunging the tower into brief, suffocating darkness. When the light returned, she heard it, a soft thud, like footsteps on the catwalk. Her fingers froze on the keys. The door to the loft rattled, its hinges groaning as if someone had pushed it. Clara's breath hitched. She turned slowly, her eyes scanning the shadows. There, at the edge of the catwalk, stood the flyman. Not a shadow this time, but a figure, tall and gaunt, his face obscured by darkness. He didn't move, didn't speak, but his presence filled the space, heavy and oppressive. The ropes beside her desk swayed, their knots unraveling again, coiling like snakes on the floor. Clara wanted to scream, to run, but her legs felt rooted to the spot. The figure took a step forward, and the lights flickered again. When they came back on, he was gone, but the door was wide open, swinging on its hinges. She didn't wait for him to return. She grabbed her coat and fled, vowing never to work the fly tower again. But the theater wasn't done with her. The next week, during a quiet moment in the second balcony, the rotten egg smell returned, stronger this time, choking her. She felt a tap on her shoulder, then another on her arm, each touch colder than the last. She spun around, but the row was empty, the seats stretching out in silent mockery. She quit that night, leaving her dreams of the theater behind, unable to bear the weight of my unseen residence. Years passed, and others came. Ushers, technicians, cleaners. They all felt it. The swinging gate, the flickering lights, the cold drafts, the taps from invisible hands. A young usher named Sam, working in the 1950s, swore he saw the phantom audience man sitting in the second balcony, his silhouette clear against the dim house lights. When Sam approached, the figure vanished, leaving only a faint whiff of that acrid smell. A technician in the 1970s, working late in the fly tower, heard footsteps pacing the catwalk, followed by the unmistakable clang of the fly rail gate. He left his tools behind and never returned. Even now, in the quiet hours after the curtains fall, I feel them. The flyman pacing his eternal route, the audience man lingering in his seat, their presence woven into my very bones. My staff still whisper their stories, their voices hushed as they pass the second balcony or climb to the fly tower. They say I hum with history, and they're right. But it's not just history, it's the weight of those who never left. Their footsteps echoing in my halls, their breath stirring the air. I am the Royal Alexandra Theater, and I am never truly alone. Story 10, Theater of Shades. I am the Elgin and Winter Garden Theater, a vaudeville palace born in 1913, my walls steeped in the echoes of 1,000 performances. My gilded staircases, velvet curtains, and ornate chandeliers have borne witness to laughter, tragedy, and secrets that refuse to fade. They call me haunted. But I am more than that. I am alive with the shades of those who loved me too fiercely to leave. My story is not one of rituals or divine judgment, but of restless souls bound to my boards, their presence woven into my very plaster and wood. Listen closely, for I will tell you of the specters who linger within me, of the events that unfold when the lights dim, and of the terror that grips those who dare to wander my halls after dark. It begins with the Lavender Lady, a figure as delicate as the scent that trails her. I first felt her presence in the early days, when the world was younger and my seats were filled with eager faces. She was no ordinary patron. She moved with the grace of a forgotten era, her Victorian gown whispering against my grand stairwell. I sensed her heartbreak, a quiet ache that seeped into my walls. They say she was an actress, or perhaps a society lady, who lost everything to love's betrayal. Her name is lost to time, but her lavender perfume lingers, a faint sweetness that clings to the air. I feel her glide up my staircase nightly, her steps weightless, her form dissolving into mist before she reaches the landing. Those who see her speak of a sudden chill, a shiver that crawls beneath their skin, and the scent of lavender that blooms and fades in an instant. She does not speak, but I hear her sorrow in the silence, a melody of loss that hums through my corridors. One autumn evening in 1920, a stagehand named Clara ventured too late into my upper balcony, chasing a flickering light she swore she saw. She was a practical woman, not given to flights of fancy, but her hands trembled as she climbed the stairs. The air grew colder with each step, and the faint scent of lavender curled around her like a lover's embrace. She told me later, in a whisper to a coworker, that she saw her, a woman in a high-necked gown, her face pale and eyes distant, ascending the stairwell ahead. Clara called out, but the figure vanished, leaving only a gust of icy air that sent her stumbling backward. She fled, her boots echoing on my polished floors, and swore never to work the night shift again. But I knew the Lavender Lady meant no harm. She is bound to me, reliving her endless climb, searching for something she will never find. Then there is Sam, my trombone player, whose laughter once filled my orchestra pit. He was a musician in the vaudeville days, his notes bright and brassy, coaxing smiles from even the weariest crowds. In 1918, tragedy struck. During a rehearsal, Sam climbed a rickety ladder to adjust a stage light. The ladder gave way, and he plummeted to my stage, his trombone clattering beside him. His life ended in an instant, but his spirit never left. I feel him still, a warm presence in my auditorium, his love for music, undimmed by death. At night, when the theater is empty, faint trombone notes drift through my halls, a mournful tune that seems to rise from nowhere and everywhere. The seats in my auditorium sometimes creak and fold, as if Sam is settling in to watch a show that never begins. In 1935, a janitor named Henry encountered Sam in a way he could never forget. He was sweeping my stage late at night, the only sound the soft swish of his broom. His flashlight began to flicker, its beam stuttering in the darkness. He cursed, thinking the battery was dying, but then he heard it, a low, brassy note, like a trombone warming up. The sound came from the orchestra pit, but no one was there. Henry froze, his breath catching, as the seats in the front row began to fold and unfold one by one, as if invisible patrons were taking their places. He called out, his voice trembling, but the only reply was another note, sharper this time, echoing through my empty auditorium. His flashlight died completely, plunging him into darkness, and he ran, tripping over his broom in his haste to escape. He told the tale to anyone who would listen, and soon Sam's legend grew, a friendly ghost who loved the stage too much to leave it. But I'm not home to just one or two spirits. There are others, less defined, who drift through my shadows. In the 1940s, during a quiet winter, a seamstress named Margaret was repairing costumes in my dressing rooms. She worked alone, her needle flashing in the dim light of a single lamp. The air grew heavy, and she felt a presence behind her, as if someone were watching. She turned, expecting a co-worker, but found only darkness. Then a faint giggle echoed from the corner where no one stood. Her lamp flickered, and the costumes on the rack swayed gently, as if brushed by unseen hands. Margaret's heart pounded, but she was stubborn, refusing to flee, her fingers shaking as she stitched. And when she left, she swore she heard footsteps following her down the hall. She never returned, but I feel those nameless shades still, their laughter and whispers woven into my walls. The years passed, and my hauntings grew more frequent. In the 1970s, a technician named Paul was calibrating my lights when he felt a sudden chill in the control booth. His phone, left on the console, began to flicker, its screen flashing on and off. He laughed it off at first, blaming faulty wiring, but then the booth door slammed shut, though no one was near. From the auditorium below, a single trombone note rang out, clear and deliberate. Paul's breath hitched, and he fumbled for the door only to find it stuck. The lights in the booth dimmed, and a faint scent of lavender curled through the air, mingling with the brassy echo. He pounded on the door, shouting, until it finally gave way, and he stumbled into the hallway, his face pale. He told the stage manager it was Sam and the Lavender Lady, playing some ghostly prank. But he never worked alone in my halls again. By the 1990s, my reputation as a haunted theater was well known. Visitors came not just for shows, but for the thrill of encountering my spirits. One night, a group of late-night cleaners moved through my upper tier, their voices loud to mask their unease. They were dusting the chandeliers when one of them, a young man named Leo, felt a cold breath on his neck. He turned, expecting a draft, but the air was still. The others laughed, teasing him, until the chandelier above began to sway, its crystals clinking softly. The scent of lavender bloomed, and a low trombone note hummed through the air. The cleaners froze, their rags forgotten, as the seats below creaked in unison, folding and unfolding in a slow, deliberate rhythm. They fled, leaving their tools scattered, and swore they heard laughter, a woman's giggle and a man's heart chuckle, chasing them down the stairwell. In 2010, a stage manager named Emily decided to test my legends. She stayed after hours, armed with a flashlight and a notebook, determined to document my hauntings. She sat in the auditorium, the silence pressing against her, and waited. Hours passed, and she began to doubt the stories. Then her flashlight flickered, and a faint trombone note drifted from the pit. She stood, her heart racing, and called out, "Sam!" The seats around her creaked, one by one, as if an invisible audience were settling in. The air grew cold, and the scent of lavender enveloped her. She turned, expecting to see the Lavender Lady, but saw only shadows. Then her notebook slipped from her hands, pages fluttering as if caught in a breeze. She grabbed it and ran, her footsteps echoing in my empty halls, and later admitted she felt eyes watching her until she reached the street. Even now, in 2025, my spirits remain restless. Just last month, a security guard named Malik patrolled my corridors after midnight. His flashlight began to flicker as he passed the grand stairwell, and the air grew heavy with the scent of lavender. He paused, his breath visible in the sudden chill, and heard a soft giggle from above. He shone his light up the stairs, but no one was there. Then, from the auditorium, a single trombone note rang out, followed by the creak of seats. Malik's radio crackled, though no one was on the line, and he felt a gentle push, as if an unseen hand were guiding him toward the exit. He left, his heart pounding, and told his supervisor he'd never work the night shift again. I am the Elgin and Winter Garden Theater, and my shades are part of me. The Lavender Lady glides up my stairwell, her sorrow eternal. Sam plays his trombone, his notes a reminder of the stage he loved. Others, nameless but present, whisper and laugh in my shadows. They are not bound by rituals or divine will, but by their love for this place, their refusal to leave my embrace. Each night, when the lights dim and the world grows quiet, I feel them stir, their presence a shiver in my bones. Those who enter my halls may leave with stories of their own, tales of chills, scents, and sounds that linger long after they've gone. I am their home, their stage, and their story is mine to tell. Story 11, Theater of Shades. I am Herbert Beerbohm Tree, or at least I was. Once the master of His Majesty's Theater, I built this place with my own ambition, my own sweat, and yes, a piece of my soul. The stage was my kingdom, my apartment within these walls, my sanctuary. But death, that unyielding critic, took me in 1917. You'd think it would end there, my final bow, the curtain drawn. Yet here I am, tethered to these boards, my presence woven into the very fabric of this theater. I cannot leave. And now, as I linger in the shadows, I see another has joined me, a spirit as restless as I, though far less dignified. This is no mere ghost story. This is my story, and his, and the terror we've unwittingly unleashed upon those who tread these haunted halls. It began with the cold, not the kind you shrug off with a shawl, but a bone-deep chill that claws at you, sudden and unexplainable. I first noticed it in my favorite box, stage right, top row. I'd linger there, unseen, watching rehearsals, my heart swelling at the sight of actors breathing life into words. But the living began to feel me. A young actress, clutching her script, shivered violently one evening, her breath misting in the air. "It's like someone standing right behind me," she whispered to her companion, who laughed it off. I wasn't laughing. I felt the weight of my own presence, heavy and inescapable, as if the theater itself were exhaling my essence. The cold wasn't my doing, at least not intentionally. I merely existed, my spirit bound to the wood and velvet of this place. But the living grew wary. Stage hands whispered of a presence in the understair passages, where I often wandered, my phantom footsteps echoing on the worn steps. They described a lanky figure in a top hat, glimpsed in the flicker of gaslight, vanishing before they could blink. I saw myself in their fear, tall, angular, my evening clothes a relic of a grander age. I didn't mean to frighten them. I only wanted to stay, to ensure the show went on, as it always had, under my watch. But then came the night of the stage door. It was late, the theater empty save for a lone fireman making his rounds. I drifted toward the stage, drawn to the silence that followed the performance. The door, solid oak, heavy as my regrets, refused to budge. The fireman pushed, grunting, then froze. Through the door's small window, he saw me. Not a memory or a trick of light, but me, my top hat tilted, my coat flapping as if caught in a wind that didn't exist. I was struggling, not against the door, but against something deeper, something that held me here. His face paled, his lantern trembling in his hand. He fled, leaving the door ajar, and I felt a pang of guilt. I hadn't meant to be seen. The story spread. Herbert's ghost, they called me, half in jest, half in dread. I didn't mind the name, but I minded the fear. I was no malevolent spirit, no specter bent on harm. I was a guardian, a caretaker of this theater's legacy. Yet the more they spoke of me, the heavier my presence grew, as if their belief gave me weight, made me more real. The cold spots worsened. Props shifted inexplicably backstage, a script falling from a table, a spotlight flickering without cause. I tried to stop it, to rein in whatever part of me was leaking into their world, but I was powerless. I was no longer the director of this drama. Then came 1984, and with it, a new presence. Tommy Cooper, that towering, boisterous comedian, took the stage for a live broadcast. I watched from my box, amused by his clumsy charm, his oversized props, and his infectious laugh. But then he faltered. His knees buckled, and he collapsed mid-act, the audience laughing, thinking it part of the jest. I knew better. I felt the moment his spirit tore free, a sudden jolt that rippled through the theater's unseen spaces. He was gone, his body still, but something of him remained. I sensed it immediately, a chaotic, playful energy utterly unlike my own somber presence. Tommy's spirit didn't linger quietly. The props room, where they laid his body that night, became a playground for his mischief. Plastic apples and oranges, stored neatly on shelves, began to fly. A stagehand yelped as a rubber banana struck his shoulder, tumbling from nowhere. Another swore she saw a dummy pie, custard yellow, absurdly large, wobble on its shelf before launching itself at her feet. The crew laughed nervously, blaming Tommy's ghost for the pranks. They weren't wrong. I saw him, or rather felt him, a whirlwind of glee, tossing props with invisible hands, chuckling in the ether. He was no guardian like me. He was a clown, even in death, refusing to let the curtain fall on his final act. At first, I thought we could coexist. I kept to my box, my understair haunts, while Tommy reigned over the props room. But the theater began to change. The air grew heavier, the shadows sharper. The living noticed it too. A carpenter, repairing a set piece, fled the stage one night, swearing he heard laughter. Not Tommy's warm guffaw, but something colder, mocking. A seamstress, threading a needle in the costume shop, screamed when a rack of Victorian coats swayed violently as if pushed by unseen hands. I felt it too, a third presence, something neither Tommy nor I could claim. It was angry, restless, drawn to the chaos we'd created. The incidents grew darker. One night, a spotlight crashed to the stage, narrowly missing an actor. The crew blamed faulty rigging, but I saw the truth. A shadow, formless yet deliberate, coiling around the ropes. Tommy's pranks escalated too. Props didn't just fall, they shattered. A glass vase used in a period drama exploded backstage, sending shards across the floor. The crew whispered of curses, of a theater gone wrong. I wanted to tell them it wasn't us, not entirely, but how could I? I was a ghost, voiceless to the living, and Tommy was too busy laughing to notice the darkness he was feeding. I began to follow the new presence, tracking its movements through the theater. It was no ghost like us, no remnant of a human soul. It was something older, hungrier, born from the theater's long history of passion and tragedy. My presence, my refusal to leave, had cracked open a door. Tommy's reckless energy had flung it wide. This thing fed on our unrest, growing stronger with every cold spot, every shattered prop. It lingered in the trapdoors, the catwalks, the forgotten corners where no light reached, and it was watching the living, waiting. One night, I saw it clearly. A young actress, alone on stage, was practicing her lines. The theater was dark, save for a single ghost light illuminating the boards. She paused, her breath catching as the air turned frigid. I felt it too. The thing, coiling around her, its presence like oil in the air. Her script fell from her hands, pages scattering. She turned, eyes wide, and I saw what she saw. A figure, not me, not Tommy, but something else. Tall, featureless, its edges blurring into the shadows. She screamed and ran, leaving the ghost light flickering. I tried to follow to protect her, but the thing turned on me. Its gaze was a void, pulling at my essence, threatening to unravel me. I retreated to my box, my sanctuary, but even there, I wasn't safe. The thing followed, its presence seeping into the velvet seats, the gilded railings. Tommy's laughter echoed from the props room, oblivious to the danger. I wanted to shout, to warn him, but we were ghosts, bound by different rules. The theater was no longer ours. It belonged to this thing, this shadow we'd awakened. The final event came on a quiet night, the theater empty. A stagehand, braver than most, stayed late to repair a broken set. I watched from the wings, my heart heavy. The thing was there, stronger now, its form almost solid, a towering silhouette with no face. The stagehand hummed to himself unaware until his tools began to move. A hammer slid across the floor. A saw twitched, then rose, hovering. He froze, his breath visible in the sudden cold. I tried to intervene, to push back the shadow, but it was too strong. The saw flew, grazing his arm, and he screamed, bolting for the exit. I followed, desperate to stop it. In the props room, Tommy was still at it, tossing plastic fruit, laughing like a child. I felt a surge of anger. His carelessness had fed this thing, made it bold. I focused, willing my presence into something tangible, and for a moment I succeeded. A crate of props toppled, startling Tommy's spirit into silence. The shadow paused, its attention split. It was enough. The stagehand escaped, the door slamming behind him. Now I linger still, watching, waiting. Tommy's pranks have quieted, but the shadow remains, biding its time. The theater is a battleground, a place where the living tread lightly and the dead cannot rest. I am Herbert Beerbohm Tree, guardian of his majesties, and I will fight to keep this place safe, even if it means facing the darkness I helped create. The show must go on, but at what cost? Story 12, The Ghost of the National Theater. I am John E. McCullough, or what remains of me. Once I commanded the stage of the National Theater in Washington, D.C., my voice rolling through the auditorium like thunder, my presence holding audiences in thrall. That was before the night in 1885 when a bullet stole my breath, fired in a backstage quarrel over a role I'd earned through years of sweat and craft. The stage was my kingdom, and I died in its shadows, my blood seeping into the boards beneath. They say I fell into a drain below the stage, my body left to cool in the damp dark. But death, it seems, was not my final curtain. I linger here, bound to this place, my story unfinished, my spirit tethered to the theater that claimed me. Tonight, the air hums with the anticipation of an opening night. The National Theater, grand as ever in 1895, pulses with life. Stagehands scurry, actors murmur their lines, and the scent of grease paint hangs heavy. I watch from the prompter's corner, unseen, my form a flicker of Elizabethan garb, the costume of Hamlet I wore for my Washington debut. The living do not notice me, not yet, but I am here, as I always am, when the theater stirs to life. It begins with a young actress, Clara, new to the company and trembling with nerves. She's to play Ophelia tonight, a role I once shared the stage with. I see her at the prompter's table, her script open, her fingers tracing the words as she whispers them to steady herself. The auditorium is empty, save for her. The house lights dim to a ghostly glow. I drift closer, curious. Her voice falters, and she glances over her shoulder, sensing something. Me, perhaps. The air grows colder, and I feel the familiar tug of the stage urging me to manifest. I resist, for now. Clara's eyes dart to the prompter's desk, where her script lies. A page turns, though no breeze stirs the air. She gasps, her hand flying to her chest. I did not touch the page, but my presence is enough to unsettle the world of the living. She mutters to herself, blaming a draft, but her unease lingers. I follow as she hurries backstage, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The theater is a labyrinth of shadows, its narrow corridors lined with props and costumes from 100 performances. I know every creak of these boards, every hidden corner. I was born here, in a way, and died here too. The next night, during dress rehearsal, the strangeness grows. Clara is on stage, delivering her lines when she freezes mid-sentence. The other actors pause, confused, as she stares into the wings. I am there, standing just beyond the curtain's edge, my form half solid, my eyes fixed on her. She sees me, or senses me, and her voice breaks. The director calls for a break, but Clara remains rooted, her gaze locked on the spot where I stand. A stagehand, a gruff man named Thomas, notices her distress and strides over. "What's got you spooked, girl?" he asks, but she only shakes her head, unable to explain. I fade back into the shadows, my presence a whisper now, but the chill I leave behind lingers. Thomas shivers, rubbing his arms, and mutters about the theater's drafts. By the third night, the company is abuzz with whispers. Clara tells the others of the figure she saw, describing my tall frame, my antique costume, the way my eyes seemed to pierce through her. The older actors exchange knowing glances. They've heard the stories, my stories. The stage manager, a wiry man named Henry, who's been here for decades, recounts the tale of my death to the younger members. "Shot right here backstage," he says, pointing to a trap door near the prompter's corner. "They say McCullough never left. Likes to watch the shows, especially Hamlet." The actors laugh nervously, but Clara's face pales. She's felt me, and she knows. That night, during the final rehearsal, the theater grows restless. Props go missing. A dagger, a crown, a letter meant for Hamlet's scene. They turn up in odd places. The dagger balanced on a lighting rig, the crown tucked behind a curtain, the letter folded neatly on the prompter's desk. I move them not out of malice, but because this is my stage and I cannot resist touching the tools of my craft. The crew blames carelessness, but the air grows heavy, the shadows thicker. Clara refuses to go near the prompter's table now, claiming it feels wrong. She's right. That's where I died, where my blood stained the wood, where my spirit first took root. Opening night arrives, and the theater is alive with anticipation. The audience fills the seats, their murmurs a dull roar. I sit in the prompter's corner, invisible, watching Clara take the stage as Ophelia. She's radiant, her fear buried beneath her performance, but I can sense it still. Midway through Act 3, as she delivers her lines, a low shuffle echoes across the stage. The audience doesn't hear it, but the actors do. Clara falters, her eyes flicking to the wings. I'm there again, my form more solid now, my costume catching the faint glow of the stage lights. She stumbles over her line, and the actor playing Hamlet steps forward, covering her mistake. The audience claps, unaware, but backstage, the crew is tense. Thomas swears he saw a shadow move where no one stood. After the show, Clara lingers in her dressing room, reluctant to leave. I watch her from the doorway, my presence a cool breeze that makes her shiver. She's packing her things when she hears it, a faint rustle like footsteps on the stage. She freezes, her eyes wide. "Who's there?" she calls, her voice trembling. No one answers, but the sound grows louder, deliberate. It's me, pacing the boards I once owned, my boots heavy against the wood. Clara grabs her coat and flees, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. I let her go. I am not here to harm, only to be seen, to be remembered. The next performance brings new disturbances. A stagehand finds a rusty pistol in the substage area, half buried in dust. It's the one that killed me, or so they say. Henry, the stage manager, handles it with reverence, muttering about the Smithsonian men who found it years ago. He locks it in a prop box, but the next night it's back in the substage as if I'd placed it there myself. I didn't, but the theater has a way of holding on to its ghosts. The actors grow jumpy, their lines slipping. Clara, especially, is unraveling. She swears she smells cigars in the wings, though no one smokes here. It's my scent, the one I carried in life, lingering like a memory. By the fifth night, the company is fraying. A lighting rig flickers during a quiet scene, casting eerie shadows across the stage. The audience thinks it's part of the show, but the actors know better. Clara refuses to go on, claiming she saw me again, this time at the prompter's table, my hand resting on her script. Henry takes her place, feeding lines from the wings, but even he feels the weight of my presence. He later tells Thomas he felt something brush past him backstage, a presence that smelled faintly of cologne. They don't speak my name, but they know. The final night of the run is chaos. Props move without explanation. A goblet rolls across the stage during a silent moment, stopping at Clara's feet. She screams, breaking character, and the audience shifts uncomfortably. The director calls it a technical issue, but the actors are shaken. Backstage, Thomas finds the trap door to the substage open, though no one touched it. He peers into the dark, his lantern casting long shadows. For a moment, he sees me, a tall figure in Elizabethan garb, standing at the edge of the light. He stumbles back, cursing, and slams the trap door shut. After the curtain falls, the theater empties, but I remain. Clara, the last to leave, pauses at the stage door. She looks back at the darkened auditorium, her breath visible in the cold air. "John?" she whispers, as if testing the name. I step forward, my form flickering into view, my eyes meeting hers. She doesn't scream this time. She simply nods, as if accepting my presence, and slips out into the night. The door closes, and I am alone again, pacing the stage, my footsteps a soft echo in the silence. I am John E. McCullough, and this is my theater, The living come and go, their performances fleeting, but I endure. The stage is my eternity, its boards my grave, its shadows my home. Each opening night I return, watching, waiting, my story woven into the very walls of this place. They may forget my name, but they will feel me. In the chill of the air, the shuffle of unseen steps, the weight of a gaze from the prompter's corner. I am the ghost of the National Theater, and I will never take my final bow.